All right, folks, where we left off last time was this idea of the puzzle between elitism and populism. So we have elitism ruled by the best and brightest versus populism ruled by the average folks. And we're looking for that happy medium that can give us the best of both worlds and try to downplay the disadvantages of each. So that was our puzzle. How do we incorporate the diversity and demands inherent in rule by the many into a system with the efficiency and stability offered with rule by the few? And our answer to that philosophically is what we call pluralism, and that's going to be our happy medium. If you come back to this chart that we saw last time, what we had was modern America and modern democracies are kind of down here in this quadrant, where many people are allowed to participate, to vote, to have their voice heard, to shape the discussion. But the actual decision that gets made is going to be filtered through a relatively small number of political and social elites to actually make the decisions on our behalf. So that's going to be our pluralist quadrant. It's going to be our happy medium, that not too hot, not too cold, just right area of democracy. So the way that works, the way that we conceptualize that, is we accept that we have both mass publics, we have populists, we have regular folks, and we have elites. But we're going to change the terminology a little bit. Instead of publics and elites, let's call them leaders and followers. And these two elements of society form a reciprocal relationship. You can't have one without the other. So you can start to think about that as an example, right? Let's break away from politics and society for a bit. Let's talk about smartphones, something that you all are hopefully comfortable with as an idea. And we can ask, who are the leaders in terms of like the smartphone industry? And you could point to some different companies. You might say Google or Samsung, but let's be honest here, the icon of smartphone technology is going to be Apple. So what is it that makes Apple the leader? Well, there's lots of different things that might filter into it, right? What we expect of leaders is that they, for lack of a better term, provide leadership. So what does Apple do? Well, they have an operating system that's relatively easy and simple and straightforward. It's designed for people that might not be technically advanced, because I can give this to my mom who can't work technology to save her life, and she can make do and make an iPhone work for her. If you have a problem, they have Apple stores all over the country where you can go and you can get a certified genius to fix your problem for you. They might not be the cheapest, but they have a app ecosystem and an interface and a support system in place that makes them a decent value for people that might be interested and want something that just works. If you're more technologically advanced, if you want something that's a little less expensive but requires a little bit more work on your part, obviously there's Android that's available as well, and they provide different sorts of elements in order to get people to endorse them, right? Because what leaders really need to make it all work is they need followers, they need supporters. So the way that Apple knows that they're a leader is that when they come out with a new product, there's a whole bunch of Apple people that still line up around the block a day in advance, willing to pay a price premium to get their product. So what could Apple do to turn those people off? I don't know. I mean, there's lots of stuff that I did not know I needed in a phone until Apple told me. I didn't know that I wanted a proprietary charging cord that cost me an extra $30. I didn't know that I wanted to do away with my headphone jack. All these things, lo and behold, we might have thought might have turned people off, but it turns out that they still generate that support. So are there things that Apple could do to finally turn people off? Maybe. I'm not sure what they are, but maybe they exist. But in the meantime, leaders lead, supporters follow, and you need both working together. And whenever that happens, we call that a group. And groups come in all shapes and sizes. We can certainly see this with society. This is the whole idea of the social contract. We, the people, get together. We pick some leaders. We give them some power. They tell us what to do, and we do it. And if we don't like it, if they're not doing a good job, then we have the right of the people is to alter or to abolish their government, or so says Thomas Jefferson. We can vote the bums out. We can replace the government. We can change the government. Social groups certainly factor in. If you think about a group like the NRA, the National Rifle Association, those leaders do a lot of stuff. They organize, they provide classes, they provide resources to the followers. But if everybody decided that the NRA wasn't doing a good job and they stopped paying their membership fees and they dropped out of the organization would no longer exist. Those leaders have to keep those followers happy and coming back in order to have their support. Religious organizations, classrooms, this is the only context in the world where I get to be considered an elite. But if you don't like the way that I teach class, if you don't like the material that I curate and the way that I provide it to you and the way that I run the show, then you all leave. You can drop out, you can take your money and go someplace else. And if no one wants to take my classes, I'm no longer in a position to teach. They get rid of me because I don't have the support of the students anymore. Sports teams, clubs work in the same way. And you can imagine your workplace has leaders and followers. This sort of dynamic exists all over the place, and a really good example of that is in this video. Let's cross our fingers and hope that this works here for us, because this is the greatest encapsulation I've ever found of this leader-follower dynamic, and it takes just a couple minutes.
If you've learned a lot about leadership and making a movement, then let's watch a movement happen start to finish in under 3 minutes and dissect some lessons. First, of course, a leader needs the guts to stand alone and look ridiculous. But what he's doing is so simple, it's almost instructional. This is key. You must be easy to follow. Now here comes the first follower with a crucial role. He publicly shows everyone else how to follow. Notice how the leader embraces him as an equal. So it's not about the leader anymore, it's about them, plural. Notice how he's calling to his friends to join in. See, it takes guts to be a first follower. You stand out and you brave ridicule yourself. Being a first follower is an underappreciated form of leadership. The first follower transforms a lone nut into a leader. If the leader is the flint, the first follower is the spark that really makes the fire. Now here's the second follower. This is a turning point. It's proof the first has done well. Now it's not a lone nut, and it's not two nuts. 3 is a crowd, and a crowd is news. A movement must be public. Make sure outsiders see more than just the leader. Everyone needs to see the followers, because new followers emulate followers, not the leader. Now here come 2 more people, then 3 more immediately. Now we've got momentum. This is the tipping point, and now we have a movement. As more people jump in, it's no longer risky. If they were on the fence before, there's no reason not to join in now. They won't stand out, they won't be ridiculed, and they will be part of the in crowd if they hurry. And over the next minute you'll see the rest who prefer to stay part of the crowd, because eventually they'd be ridiculed for not joining. And ladies and gentlemen, that is how a movement is made. So let's recap what we've learned. If you are a version of the shirtless dancing guy, all alone, remember the importance of nurturing your first few followers as equals, making everything clearly about the movement, not you. Be public, be easy to follow. But the biggest lesson here, did you catch it? Leadership is overglorified. Yes, it started with the shirtless guy, and he'll get all the credit, but you saw what really happened. It was the first follower that transformed a lone nut into a leader. There's no movement without the first follower. See, we're told that we all need to be leaders, but that would be really ineffective. The best way to make a movement, if you really care, is to courageously follow and show others how to follow. When you find a lone nut doing something great, have the guts to be the first person to stand up and join in.
Okay, so I love the stupid shirtless dancing guy video because it is, this perfect encapsulation. If he doesn't have those folks come and start dancing with him, he's just, the lone nut. It's really the followers that make the difference. It's the followers that provide the power in that group or in that effort, right? So when we put these 2 elements together, elites and publics, leaders and followers, we're going to call that dynamic a group. And a group is always organized around what we call the common good. So what's the common good? It's the thing that all the elements of the group work towards. So you can start to think about this. It's not necessarily what benefits you as an individual. We'll get there. Why do we get people to participate? Well, that's the benefits that they receive, right? So you can start to think about, say, your job or your workplace. Who are the members of the group? Well, you've got bosses, you may have managers, owners, you have employees, you have suppliers, you have distributors, you have customers. All of them are involved in that group. So when we think about what is the common good, making money is not the common good of your workplace. Making money is the benefit that you receive. You get a paycheck to be there. But the common good is something a little bit different. The common good is the thing that the customers and the distributors and the bosses and the workers are all engaged in making happen. So what's the common good of a business? If it's not making money, chances are it's probably something along the lines of providing a good value business, a good value product, because that's what is going to make a customer happy. It might not be the cheapest. Hopefully it's not the most expensive, but it's a good investment for them to come in. They're going to tell other people about what a great value they got, what good service they received, what a good product they received at a fair price. They're going to come back again, so you're going to have repeat and growing customer base. If you're an employee, you want it to be a good value. You want to be able to, say, sell a product that is a good product at a reasonable price so that people buy more, so that you get a better paycheck. The business owner wants to do the same. They want to make a profit. They could maximize their profit, right? If they didn't pay you enough, but then they would have such turnover that, and their employees, if they don't pay adequately, that they might not be providing, again, that good value for the consumer. The consumer comes in, gets bad advice from one of the employees, they get turned off of the business, and the business ultimately doesn't succeed. So what do you want? You want a good value product, because that's what keeps everybody happy, from the owner to the employee to the customer to the supplier to the distributor. That's what they're after, is that common good. So the benefits, the way that we get you to participate would be making money, right? Or it could be that the benefit that you receive, maybe you've worked in a place where they could have paid you better, like you got a little bit underpaid, but you just really like the people that were there. You like the owner, you like the bosses, you like the other people. Maybe the benefit to you was the solidarity benefit. It was the other people, the sense of solidarity that you got from being a part of that organization. Maybe it's the benefit that you get as purpose. Of maybe you get this sense of purpose, you enjoy doing the work. This is certainly true with like volunteerism. You volunteer with people and with organizations because you believe in the cause and you like the people that are there. It's solidarity and purpose of benefit, not necessarily material. Chances are, if it's really volunteer work, you're not, getting anything tangible from it. So the benefits that you get from belonging to the organization. And I always like to think of participation. If it's not a workplace, the easy example that most people know would be like clubs in high school. Something like Spanish Club. Why do people join Spanish Club? Well, maybe they join Spanish Club because they really want the Spanish Club t-shirt, and they want to take the field trip at the end of the year, and they want to have the fiesta at the end of the semester. Maybe they do it because their friends are in Spanish Club, or that person that they liked, they were in math class with last year, but they're not in class with them anymore, but they're in Spanish Club, so you can go and join Spanish Club, because then maybe you can hang out with so-and-so and see how things go. And then there's a few members of Spanish Club that are there because they absolutely adore learning about Spanish language and culture. And these people because they're the ones that talk with the, a European Spanish accent and talk about how they're going to spend a year abroad when they get to college, enjoying the culture of Barcelona, and they say it like that. So you get the material benefits, solidarity benefits, purpose of benefits. What's the other reason some people join Spanish Club? Well, if you're in my book, you join Spanish Club because your Spanish teacher that you were required to take your 2 years of Spanish was the Spanish Club sponsor. And it was well known that if you wanted to make an A and even potentially a B, that you had to be an active member of Spanish Club, because that's just how she rolled. So I didn't want to take my C in Spanish, so I am coerced into attending some Spanish Club meetings and pretending like I like it. So benefits and coercion are there. That's why people get involved. And actually the number one reason people say that they join groups or participate in groups is because other people ask them to. It's that solidarity benefit that drives a lot of folks, because after all, we are social creatures. Maybe there's a little arm twisting and coercion involved there as well. Now, from a group's perspective, they love solidarity benefits, and they especially love purposive benefits. because those are the things that keep you invested at a relatively low cost. If the group's having to provide lots of shirts and parties and food, that's a strain on the resources that otherwise might be going to something more productive rather than just membership retention. Groups can suffer from the free rider problem. This is where more gets spent on those material benefits and member attraction. People that free ride, they reap the benefits without putting in the effort, without making the investment themselves. And as groups get bigger and bigger and bigger, the free rider problem becomes more pronounced. It also results in some other problems. It could be that the sense of purpose that the group has gets divided, that it's harder for them to stay on task. It's harder for them to keep that group efficiently organized and working towards a common goal. So we'll often talk about groups, the more followers, the more support, the more powerful that group gets, but there can be a limit at the point that a group loses its internal cohesion. Groups can get too big and too unwieldy for their own good. But the idea here is that any group can form for any reason, any interest that exists out there in society, a leader can potentially tap into. We'll call those leaders policy or social entrepreneurs. The idea there is anybody can have a good idea, and as long as they present it well and provide good leadership, if it's truly a good idea, then people will jump on board, people will offer their support, they will gain those followers. And this is our idea of mobility, right? That this is the meritocracy. Through hard work, through good organizing, through learning how to do it, even regular folks can develop their leadership skills and rise through the system. So it offers us that upward mobility. So this is just one group, but society is not just one group. Society is lots of groups. They come in different shapes and sizes. Some might be political, some might not be political. At some point, groups get so big that they start to fracture, and they might be made up of other smaller groups. Political parties are a good example of this. The Republicans and the Democrats aren't totally unified. Instead, the Democrats have, environmentalists and union workers, and those two shouldn't coexist because union workers, chances are, want more factory jobs and manufacturing. Environmentalists tend to want fewer factories out there polluting. Yet they fall under the same camp. Republicans run into the same thing. If you have religious conservatives and libertarian conservatives under the same banner, they're going to have disagreements. Libertarians want government to stay out of your personal life. Some religious conservatives may say that government should regulate what sort of medical treatments you can get and what you can talk about with your doctor and who you're allowed to invite into your personal bedroom at night. Those groups should not get along, yet they are under the same banner, and that's that size paradox at work. So more groups, more groups, more groups, more groups, more groups. Okay, here's something new. You come up here at the top here, and you're going to find this group is overlapping. So this is a green group. Let's say these are environmentalists. Red over here, decent size, conservative. Let's say these are gun folks, gun rights activists. And you can imagine, right, there is an overlap that exists between some environmentalists and some gun rights activists. I know that kind of seems odd in our modern world, how we've divided those things up politically, but Teddy Roosevelt is your best example. He started the national park system. Why did he start the national park system? So that he would have pristine wilderness to go and hunt in. And you're not allowed to do that anymore, but that was Teddy Roosevelt's idea, is he wanted a place to go hunt. So he was both a gun rights advocate and an environmental advocate as well. Over here, another overlap. What could overlap with environmentalists? Let's say, vegans. Some vegans are concerned about environmental concerns as well. So you can have these overlaps, right? You can be multidimensional, you can be parts of both, and you could imagine this in 3 dimensions where the overlaps are much more significant. So let's imagine, right? Here's Al. Al's a gun rights guy. Al belongs to this CrossFit gym across town. Al works at a small conservative libertarian. Yellow is the libertarian color. I don't know why I'm going with that, but let's run with it. Works at a small libertarian law firm downtown. We can say some things about Al. Al is probably decently well-to-do. Al, being a middle-aged white guy with a law degree, is probably, we imagine he's conservative based on the little bit that we know about him. So Al, let's call him a typical Texas guy. And here's Betty, and Betty's an environmentalist, and I guess she dabbles a little bit in veganism up there, right at the little sliver of her head. And Betty is an active member of the Democratic Party, and Betty spends most of her paycheck every week shopping at Whole Foods downtown. So here's Al and Betty. What do Al and Betty have in common? Well, on face, they don't necessarily have a whole lot in common, right? Based on what we see just right here. But there are a couple of things that they might have in common. And the most notable is right up here in that little bit of overlap. It could be that they share some common friends. And if these folks are having a wedding or a get-together of some sort, definitely not in the COVID world, we hope, but maybe Al and Betty both show up at the same party or the same event. And maybe they meet and maybe they talk to each other a little bit. And they find out that they're from the same town, and then maybe it happens that in a couple of weeks, Betty's, shopping at Whole Foods, and Al, because he's already downtown, decides to stop by the grocery store as well. And Al and Betty both show up and see each other in the checkout line. Now, this isn't the sort of thing that we might think of a lot, but these idea of cross-cutting cleavages. We are multidimensional people, and we interact with other multidimensional people, and we're going to find things in common with people that we otherwise might not have much in common with. So the idea that we are multidimensional people and interacting with different people depending on what hat we happen to be wearing. I might see different people at my gym than I do at school. I might see different people at school than I do at the local neighborhood park. And I wear these different hats. I have these different masks or identities that I exhibit. And in all those different environments and all those different settings, I'm interacting with different people, right? And the idea here is that the more we interact and the more we engage, Al and Betty might not have much in common politically, but if they're shopping at the same grocery store, chances are they share a similar socioeconomic demographic. Chances are they live in similar neighborhoods. They're worried about probably the commute and the condition of the roads in the same parts of town. Their kids may go to similar schools. They're concerned about those similar sorts of things. And the idea here is that as we build that trust, as we build that understanding that other people are not just the enemy or the other team or different, that they are like us, we're building up social capital. And social capital is the grease on the wheels of democracy that allow us to work together. So you're going to be reading a piece from Robert Putnam, The Idea of Bowling Alone. And his study really starts with the idea of bowling leagues. Going back in the 1960s and 1970s, bowling leagues were a big thing. And the idea was that different groups and organizations would put together a bowling team, 4 or 5 people. And you might have a group from the local church, and you might have another group from the local synagogue, and another group from the local factory. You'd have a group of factory workers, and you might have a group of factory managers, and you might have a neighborhood team that comes from a particular neighborhood, and you might have all sorts of different groups, right, that would get together. And on league night, they would all get together and they'd bowl against each other. And it may be that you had the group from the synagogue bowling with the group of African-American guys from across town that all worked in the same auto shop together. And come league night, they would be sitting there for a couple of hours. Only one person's allowed to bowl at a time, which means that the other 9 people, give or take, are hanging around doing what people do when they're just sitting around with other folks. They're talking and chit-chatting and BSing about the world. And if they're doing it right and it's, bowling, they're doing it with a couple pitchers of beer. To kind of, again, grease those wheels. And so what we hope that they're learning is that while those folks may be different, while they might come from a different part of town or be a different social class or a different religion or whatever it may be, that they are still people. They want a house roof over their head. They want food on their table. They want to be treated with basic dignity and respect. They want their kids to have a better life than they themselves have. They're worried about the problems of the neighborhood. They're worried about what's going on in their community. And even though they might be different, we share much more in the way of similarities than we do differences. And we get that social capital that allows for the competition that we exhibit to be not good versus evil, but hopefully a bit more friendly. So every group hypothetically should work in the same way. The more people you have, the more support that you generate, the stronger the group is going to be. We hope that they're all pointed in the same direction, because you can have, too big and unwieldy. But every group is just composed of people. Those people are going to filter their preferences through the leaders of the group, what we're going to call elites. And those elites and those groups are going to engage in what we hope is a friendly competition. So groups organize and support leaders. Leaders will represent those issues. The idea of representative government is that you will have those groups get together and maybe pool their resources in political parties or in some other form or fashion to get their leaders elected to office so that they can represent those groups' issues, and those leaders and those groups interact. And it's always going to be majority rule, but the idea here is that those majorities shift. Because I'm multidimensional, I belong to lots of different groups. Which groups I give my support to, who I'm most active with, which ones I consider, at the forefront, is always going to be changing and shifting around. I can always, belong and support my groups to varying degrees. And which groups are strongest and most well organized is something that's always changing. We get the public control of populism. The groups have to exist by keeping the people happy and responding to their interests. But we aren't just going with the whims of an ever-changing democratic public. Instead, we have to filter those feelings and those sentiments and those demands through our groups and through those leaders who don't move quite as quick, who can temper some of those base emotions, and in exchange we get the efficiency and hopefully the meritocracy that elitism offers. So that's our ultimate goal. The idea of all these groups competing is our plural system, and that's the way that we've structured and organized most modern national level democracies, is all those different competing groups fighting for our support and our dollars and our time and our energies, and then translating that support into being active in trying to make changes within a society. So with that, I'm going to sign off on this video, and I'll see y'all next time.